cloud. Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the Research Brown Bag series. As you may already know, this series is part of the Responsible Innovation and Entrepreneurship Initiative at San Francisco State University, Lam Family College of Business. And I am Chen Wei. I'm an associate professor of management here, and I'm today's moderator. So for those of you who are new to this series, let me give you a quick brief review. The main goal of this series is to share high impact and rigorous research in the realm of responsible innovation and entrepreneurship, as well as learn cutting edge research methods. So we have two talks every semester, one research domain talk and one research method talk with guest speakers who are expert in their fields. We aim to make it like, we have a fancy potluck where everyone, can share and bring their own intellectual dishes to share. But before we begin, let me remind you, this is not a formal lecture. So in fact, we encourage you to be as engaged, as vocal as you want. So consider it as like a scholarly conversation where you can pick the brains of the experts and ask questions freely.
So that
do we have?
Because I think Gomer.
Let me. Sorry about that. Let me mute.
Right.
Okay. So we are all here to learn and grow together, and we hope you will enjoy, this series and find this series both informative and enjoyable. As the moderator for today's event, I will also be, keeping an eye on the chat where you can post your name and universities, and also any questions or comments you may have throughout this presentation. I will also be keeping an eye on the time and making sure that we stay on schedule. This talk is about like 90 minutes. Let's grab our metaphorical research brown bags, fill them up with some research goodness. And it is my pleasure to introduce today's guest speaker, Dr. Ruby Lee. She's a renowned researcher in the field of marketing and also a professor from Florida State University. Her research focuses on various topics such as innovation, inclusive brand, and new product management, new product development, and international marketing. Over the past decade, she has received numerous awards and has published her work in premier journals. She also served on multiple journal editorial boards and is a sought-after speaker at academic conferences and events. I also would love to congratulate Dr. Ruby Lee for her most recent publications after 10 years of efforts at a journal.
Actually, more than 10 years.
Very
sad.
Okay. So Dr. Lee will be sharing her research, latest research findings about inclusive innovation with us. And without further ado, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Ruby Lee.
Hey, thanks for having me here. Thank you so much. And I also wanted to extend my sincere thanks to San Francisco State University, particularly your center as well, for giving me this opportunity to talk about my research. So this research, I think, is somewhat to do with my own background as well. And then also thanks for a very nice introduction of myself. And again, as Chen Wei shared, I'm a professor at Florida State University. I've been with the school since 2006. So now actually it's turning my 17 years already. So, and then in 2016 and 17, I was in Finland. Actually, I received a Fulbright Distinguished Chair Award to study in Finland. And then the topic actually was related to social innovation. Right? So a little bit more background about myself, and I will tell you why I wanted you to know a little bit, about me a little bit more. Okay, and then that would make sense for you to understand why I'm so interested in doing social innovation, inclusive innovation, this kind of research. My undergrad actually was in social work. So maybe to your surprise, oh wow, she's not in marketing. She's actually I was professionally trained as a social worker at the University of Hong Kong. So I did practice, and I also did 2 internships as well. I was placed at an elderly center, also a youth center as well. So I've been working with social workers, also NGOs for many years, even though after I left the industry, and I still continue to work with some of my old friends and also my classmates actually on different projects as well. But it just happened I like marketing more. I find it more interesting, also more creative. So I just turned myself into marketing. So so as I mentioned earlier, when I was in Finland, and one of the projects I proposed to do to work in Finland was social innovation. So that actually resulted in multiple publications and workshops as well. Okay, and this project I'm going to talk about actually is still ongoing. Okay, it's not a finished project. So it's about inclusive marketing. Okay, in a much bigger sense. And today I'm basically focused more on inclusive innovation, okay, rather than cover the bigger picture. But then it's actually part of the proposals that I wrote to Fulbright again. And right now I passed the first round of review. So I'm hoping they are going to finalize the awards in the next month or 2. So I'm going to see if I would be able to make it to Kosovo. Okay, it's one of the locations that I wanted to study. Okay, and then see if I can find any interesting results relative to the findings I'm actually collecting right now, or data that I'm collecting right now in the US as well. Okay, and then another project related to rural placemaking innovation. Okay, and then so the proposal I kind of like work on it for quite some time, and I'm going to finalize it and hopefully be able to submit it in August to USDA, so United States Department of Agriculture. And then they actually have a call for proposals every year. And then the maximum grant that they could offer is up to $250,000. $250,000. So I'm actually aiming at getting that funding so that I could actually move on with this particular project on rural placemaking innovation. So, and then there I have a few other research projects related to kind of similar domains. So we'll talk about that if we have time. So I think my motivation comes from at least 2 areas. One is I realized that, I mean, if I read the literature, when I did my social innovation projects and things like that, I realized that there are very, very limited understanding and research on inclusive innovation. And I also came to notice that JBR, Journal of Business Research, also has a call for papers. Okay, just a couple of months ago, on the exact same topic, okay, inclusive innovation. What is it? Okay. So I think this is a very timely project, and I'm so glad to see so many people showing up today, and so that we can actually kind of like discuss and then inspire each other, and then to move this type of research forward. Another motivation actually came from my conversations with brand managers, consumers, and students, because I teach MBA students. I also teach undergrad students, and actually at all 3 levels. We also have PhD programs as well. I realized that especially I have a lot of millennials in my MBA class, and then, you know, undergrad students, they're all so much interested in social issues. And they care so much about the brands they love. Oh, they love Apple, they love that Tesla, for example. And I said, why you love those brands? And then they said, a lot to do with what they represent and what they resonate, consumer's voice. So we have a lot of conversations, and then they also mentioned about the different challenges, and particularly I myself actually brought a lot of questions that I want them to think further. Why is that important? Okay, and why we wanted to study inclusive innovation instead of something else? Okay, so these are the motivations that kind of drive me into this particular topic. But one thing that's more important is what exactly is inclusion, right? Okay. So based on the literature, inclusion is about each individual feeling that she or he is valued. Okay. And I think this one is very important, it's valued and belongs fully to a certain place. Okay. Okay. So it's more than just diversity, right? So some people kind of like confused. And when I read the literature, I also found that the literature is quite confusing too. So kind of like, oh yeah, some would look at diversity is basically the same as inclusion. Okay. Some would say that, oh, diversity is just, if you have diversity, then you will have inclusion. Okay. So let's see. Okay. I'm not going to say that the literature is right or wrong. So, but I'm going to basically tell you what I have studied and so far what I think of inclusion, and then feel free to jump in. Actually, you don't have to wait until I finish all my presentations. I have a little bit more than like 20 slides, but then if you say, hey, you have questions, and then feel free to raise your hand or maybe send your questions to the chat box as well. Okay, so let's look at what has been studied about inclusion. I know some of you are from the management department, and I'm sure you have read some literatures about inclusive workplace or inclusive workforce, right? Inclusive organizational culture as well. Okay. So it's very important, and I just feel like the management folks actually have done a lot of great work, especially talking about inclusive organizational culture. But I'm a marketing person, so let me just look at it from a marketing or a marketer perspective, right? So when I look at the literature, and then I find this interesting like definition, inclusive marketing, which is defined as, or in terms of a marketing strategies, practices, and campaigns. So they are designed to consider, target, and appeal to a diverse range of consumers, including those from underrepresented groups. So basically, when you look at inclusive marketing, it seems like it includes like everything from marketing strategies, practices, and campaigns. Okay, but what I find it funny though is if you understand marketing, our 4 Ps, campaigns, promotion, advertising, yeah, should be kind of like within, come within under our marketing strategies as well. Okay, so that's a little bit kind of interesting when I look at the definition. But also let me give you a couple of examples, because I'm sure some of you may not be in this area, may not be in this domain. And so if you look at those, okay, those. Okay. So there's a campaign called the Real Beauty campaign. So the focus is more on celebrating diversity and also the realistic body images. Okay, so it's not about just size 0, right? You know, size 0 is basically very skinny, right? So it's not about size 0. It's also not right or wrong. So basically, this celebrates all types of body images. Okay. Another example I have here is about Procter & Gamble's, the P&G. Okay. And then the company P&G partnered with another company called My Brag is Beautiful. Okay, so this is that My Brag is Beautiful actually is a company, right? So they launched a wide range of products, and then their target audience is basically African Americans or Black. Okay, so which also promotes very positive representation of a Black beauty and culture. Right. So if you look at these 2 examples, okay, so what's in common in these 2 examples? Okay. So they're pretty much about campaigns, advertising, promotion, about the message, right? Instead of looking at truly the physical products or the product designs, okay? So which is what I'm going to focus more on today, about a product innovation, okay, or inclusive innovations. So it's more than just about the message that is very creative and also very inclusive. Okay. So inclusive innovation, so building on the literature from inclusive marketing. Okay. So here's a definition I included also in my proposal to Fulbright, and basically it's the development and implementation of a novel solution. So the key is a novel solution decided to meet the needs of a very wide range of people, including those from underrepresented or marginalized communities. Okay, so this to me is a very important key definition. So that also set it apart from just inclusive marketing, okay, and which is focused so much just on advertising or campaign messages. Okay. And other important element is it also prioritizes diversity and inclusiveness in the innovation process. So it's just more than just an innovation outcome or innovation product, let's say. Okay. So also from ideation to commercialization, and we also seek to create solutions that are accessible and beneficial to all. So these are kind of like key components for me to define inclusive innovation. Okay. And then let me also give you a couple of examples, okay, that show kind of inclusive innovation. Okay, so for example, in 2015, Sony actually added new accessibility settings to its PlayStation 4. So I don't know how many of you actually play video games. So I don't really, but I have two children and they do. Okay, so they talk about, hey, mom, and look at these. I mean, this one actually is a very good example for your presentation as well. So it's like, yeah, they actually PlayStation 4 include text-to-speech, closed captions, zoom, enlarged or bold text, and inverted colors as well. So these are actually very important features that added to their existing product, and that I would say this is a very good example to illustrate inclusive innovation. And then another example here is very similar. Basically, a company, a game developer, kind of also include different features so that people with certain kind of special needs will also be able to use, or will also be able to play certain games as well. And then Xbox, okay, it's also another example, kind of like I got to know from my children too. It's like Microsoft, look at Microsoft and then Xbox, adaptive controller. And you won't believe that actually the controller is very super adaptive. Even though you cannot use your hands, okay, you still can control, okay, the controller and then play video games as well. Okay. So you can use your feet, okay, you can use your voice, okay, you can use your arm and things like that. Okay. So these are actually truly examples to illustrate what I mean by or what is defined as inclusive innovation. And these two examples focus particularly on product designs. And then multiple examples related to like electronic products or something related to technology. And this one actually is another prime example to illustrate that Mattel's also kind of like put into a lot of effort to make their products more inclusive. I know over the years, Mattel also get a lot of criticism about their Barbie dolls, so unreal, right? Oh, look at their size. It's basically, it's even smaller than like size 0, right? So, but at the same time, they also kind of address that, and they also understand the importance of inclusion as well. So the company has been doing a lot to kind of like make their products more inclusive. So, for example, if you look at the Barbie on the wheelchair, it's actually launched in 2019. And immediately, this particular Barbie doll actually quickly became the best-selling doll. Okay, so these are kind of like some of the examples I wanted to highlight what exactly I mean inclusive innovations. Okay, so making sure that their products, and then when they work with their designers, those product designs and the features are very, very accessible, and then also make them available to all walks of life. So think about what can happen, right, if innovation is not inclusive, right? So some would say that, hey, it's not bad. I mean, if you have, inclusive innovation, product designs, and that's fine. If I don't have, that should be okay, right? Sometimes it's not. Actually, it's not okay. Okay.
Ruby, can I quickly jump in for a question?
Yes, yes.
So there's a couple of papers that came out recently. There's one by Vanessa Patrick and Hollenbeck. They've specifically defined inclusive design. You know, I know it's like more design versus innovation. Do you make a distinction between those two, or no, from a definitional standpoint?
No, I would say product design actually is also part of their inclusive product innovation product. Okay, the product and the product design. Okay. I actually talk about that. I kind of like make product inclusive innovation more than just product designs.
Okay.
But I would say, to answer your question, I would say product designs actually should be part of it, but shouldn't be the only thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So here's just an example to show you that if, companies don't care about inclusion and what is going to happen, right? So again, years ago, and then you probably will notice that the crash test dummies, so all those are dummies, right? They don't use real people, right, to do the crash test, and that's for sure, right? So when they decide the cars, they only use the based on the body shape of an average male passenger. Right. I am small, actually. You guys are on Zoom, then you don't ever see me. For those who know me, they know me. I'm actually pretty small, right? So I often worry when I drive, or even though when I'm in the passenger seat in the front, I worry that if something happened and then my airbag broke out, and that actually is going to hurt my body. Okay, not to blow me away, but they would basically maybe just crush my chest bones and things like that, right? So there's a lot of safety issues. Okay, so think about if companies, they don't consider, okay, different people may have different sizes. I'm not an average male passenger for sure. I'm not even an average female adult passenger as well, right? So think about if inclusive innovation is so important, right? So why did some of these brands actually fail? So when they tried to, okay, when I put tried to, I should put a code here, right? They tried to, okay. So you look at BMW, look at Mercedes-Benz, right? So these companies on different occasions try to offer lower priced cars, right, in order to attract to younger, less wealthy customers. So say, hey, we come up with something more affordable to you, okay, claiming that we wanted to be a little bit more inclusive, so that our, customers, if you cannot afford to buy our luxury models, and you could still, you can still buy our brand, right? So yeah, but then we talked to brand managers, brand consultants, I'm sorry, not the brand managers of BMW and Mercedes-Benz. And they actually come to realize that if they try to reach every single corner of the market, and basically they will just dilute the brand, right? So, and I'm going to throw you this question. You might say that, hey, is that really inclusive innovation? We'll talk about that, okay? And then we also did a couple of interviews with a retailer. Okay. And they also revealed that if they wanted to please everyone, they would please no one. Okay. So I want the reason I brought this up, these kind of examples, is to share with you brand managers. They are struggling, not all of them, but some of them. They are struggling. They don't really understand what inclusive marketing or inclusive innovation means to them. Okay. So the interesting question that come up with my interviews and then my multiple case analysis is like, so is creating cheaper models really equivalent to inclusive innovation? If you look at the definition, okay, of like inclusive innovation, okay, someone define it as inclusive innovation as maybe I just go to that definition instead of too fast. So if we look at the definition of inclusive innovation, right? So decided to meet the needs of a wide range of people, including those from underrepresented or marginalized communities. Then some would argue that, hey, if we produce something cheaper, more affordable, right? So this should be inclusive innovation, right? If we stick with this definition, and let's say if you agree with this definition, right? Some would say that, hey, if I stick with this definition, if I offer a cheaper model, is that what we should consider it as inclusive innovation? Okay, we'll talk about that later. Okay, I'm not going to give you my answer, and I'm also hoping to open open it up for everyone to think about it as well. Okay, but I have an answer to my own question.
Ruby, we have comments from the chat.
Okay, I saw that is Savika, right? Savika.
Yeah, that's right. So
yeah, innovation includes the entire process of idea generation. Yeah, I think so too. I agree as well.
In the context of social innovation, for example, and recently I was talking about a case in my class to do with making solar-powered lamps, for example, in Africa or generally worldwide for the base of the pyramid consumers, right? So those types of innovations are aimed to be inclusive because we want to solve the problems of people who can't afford lighting, and there are hazards to do with using alternative fossil fuels and so on, right? But to be able to make that kind of an innovative solution, you need to attract resources, you need private funding, because the solution has to be durable. And at the same time, in the long run, the price point has to be affordable to the target market. So cheaper solution is not necessarily equivalent to being inclusive.
No, I would say it is. I mean, personally, I would say it is. I wouldn't say that, oh, it is totally not, okay? And definitely this is also innovation, right? Because you actually wanted to innovate something to solve its social issues, right? Its social problems, right? Okay. But to me,
long term, the goal is to reduce the price point, definitely, right? But at least in the beginning, to be able to innovate, you need more resources. Like that's the idea. Although you are trying the needs of an underrepresented target market.
And you also want to solve it kind of social issues, right?
Exactly.
Social problems, right? So I will hand on to this example. I think it's very, very important, and then that will actually kind of like get into our debate as well. Because when I study and then when I look at the literature, it's confusing too. It's confusing to me too, right? What I consider inclusive innovation part of social innovation, right? Are they the same? Are they different? Okay, so we'll talk more about that too. But thank you for that example. Okay. And that actually kind of related to, okay, also my key research focus too. Okay. So what are the challenges, right, in practice of inclusion in innovation among luxury brands? Think about going back to Sarika's, your example, right? So companies wanted to create like solar panels and then make them more affordable, so that people who are in the bottom of pyramids could also afford that. Okay. So if we follow this logic, and then we make the same inquiry to luxury brands, to Coach, to Gucci, right? Hey, your brands are so expensive. I want you to make your brands more affordable so that I could also afford to buy it, right? So what's that going to challenge all those assumptions behind luxury brands, right? Luxury goods, they tend to be associated with exclusivity rather than inclusivity, right? So I hope, I mean, we all agree, right? So it's basically they're luxury brands, they build on the premise of scarcity, right? Oh, we only have like maybe 1,000 pieces, or maybe even 100 pieces, okay, of this particular edition, and that's all. So we also have this conversation as well. And then, so when we talk about the luxury industry, so it's from Professor Ivan Plau. So you're talking about exclusivity, scarcity, rarity. So the less of that particular product, the more consumers want it. Okay.
Ruby, can I ask a quick question?
Yes,
Building
yes.
on that idea, did you just distill that idea? So a lot of the premise of marketing, as you know, is based on segmentation and targeting, right? So segmentation means that you're excluding certain people, right? So how do you see that tension between like segmentation and targeting and this kind of like practices in marketing? How do you reconcile that with inclusivity? Because, you know, like you said earlier, you know, you can't be everything for everybody. So how do you reconcile conceptually and theoretically this idea of segmentation and excluding people and inclusive innovation, creating value for a more broader inclusive population?
Right. Yeah, this is a very good question, right? So that is something I am so interested in studying as well, right? So segmentation, we are taught, right? We are marketers, right? We are taught to, hey, we have to do segmentation. We cannot please everybody. So even though Apple is so pricey, I would have wanted to have one, but I cannot afford. And then, hey, Apple, can you please, I mean, kind of like lower the price or maybe create a model that make it more affordable to me, right? So these are basically very relevant questions to practitioners, right? And I'm sure some of the your audience, some of the audiences today, you mentioned they are also like grad students and they are MBA students. Maybe eventually they will become my managers as well. And I'm sure they are facing these kind of challenges when they are. When they become managers, right? So look at, I mean, I will answer your question actually, Mildred, maybe in a few slides. Okay. So can consumers actually reconcile, right, the exclusive nature of luxury brands and selling at prices many actually cannot afford, right? So going back to Sarika's example, right? So if you produce solar panels that I cannot even afford, right? Okay. So you exclude me from these very, very important products, and that actually affect my my well-being too. So look at this, I mean, very expensive bag, right? And the funny thing is a lot of people, even though it's so expensive, right? People still die for buying these kind of luxury brands, okay? So the price is 2020. Today's price is actually 25% more. Okay, so they build on luxury brands, built on the premise of exclusivity. Okay, I'm not going to lower the price. Okay, Sarika, you have any question?
I just had a comment based on,
yeah.
you know, Minu's question. So, I'm not a marketing expert, but I understand a little bit about differentiation in the context of Porter's strategies. And long ago, when I was a master's student, I remember reading something that said, on the one hand, we know about differentiation and cost-based advantage, and you have to select one way or the other, right? And then the critique was that, however, it's not necessary that you're going to be stuck in the middle, because some brands have very successfully managed to do both, right? So I was just thinking like those types of arguments to make a case for inclusivity outside of your, you know, like luxury segment, for example.
Yeah, then how should we address your question too, right? So we all need like solar panels, okay, especially those who live in kind of like a desert, right? So, and if you don't make it affordable, we are not going to be able to make it, right? So it's very interesting, and that's why I started finding this, I mean, phenomenon, especially about luxury brands being so exclusive, but then we are actually calling for, the society actually is calling for more inclusivity, right? More like a dilemma. I asked my students, I say, hey, look at this bag, okay? If it make it like $10, okay, $20, would you buy it? They say no. They actually say no. they're not going to buy a bag that is only like $10 or $20, okay? Because they actually, they admire, okay, luxury brands, okay? They buy these kind of products like an art piece that they can show off, okay? So I'm trying to throw some other questions as well. So these are the dilemma and challenge of inclusive innovation research, okay? So inclusive innovation in what form, right? Okay. It seems like we focus mostly on product designs, right? When we think of innovation, we think of inclusive designs. We think of product designs, right? Okay. And then how can everyone be included? Okay. So going back to the segmentation, right? So that's what we are taught, right? As a marketer, oh, we have to do segmentations and then find our target market and then position, okay, us in the mind of consumers. And that's what we have learned, okay, through our entire career about STP, segmentation, targeting, and positioning, right? And then so, but how can everyone be included? Who should be included, right? So they're going back to the question, who should be included, right? And then my answer to my own question is like, yeah, inclusive innovation doesn't have to be just about products. If you know the innovation literature, when we say innovation, product innovation, it's not just about a physical good, okay? So I did several, actually more than like 20 interviews with brand managers. I talked to business consultants as well, and I talked to nearly 50 to 60 consumers, okay, about this topic, okay, in the last 3-4 months, okay. So, and this is what I come up with, okay. So inclusion, okay, or inclusive innovation, okay, could be in the process. How we can increase the diversity and inclusion in the workplace, okay, and also about inclusive organizational culture. And how can we listen to our employees' voice? Okay? So the inclusive innovation, okay, will come next when we have a very inclusive innovation process. So if you look at LVMH, actually is a very large luxury brand groups. Underneath, they have several luxury brands, including Louis Vuitton, Google, Apple. These are very good examples to illustrate how companies, they don't focus on inclusive product designs. Unlike Microsoft, they have the Xbox, right? A very adaptive controller, Sesame smartphones. They also have untouched smartphones. They focus on physical products. Okay? These companies, when they have their new product designs, they don't focus on creating product designs that try to please everybody. Instead, they actually make their inclusive innovation process, actually very inclusive by having, for example, more well-balanced employees that represent different gender groups, also represent different racial groups. Okay? So that's the way they manage it. Okay? And then inclusive innovation is more than just, again, as I say, it's more than just product designs. Okay? We as a marketer, we look at inclusive innovation in 4 P's. Okay? In 4 P's. And the key is we wanted to increase our resonance to consumers' voice. Okay? We also wanted to intentionally and purposefully address inclusions for impact. So the key is the impact, rather than whether we have that particular product design, whether we are going to lower the price or not lower the price. Like the examples I gave you earlier about Mercedes-Benz, they tried to lower the price to attract certain consumer groups, but then they just failed it. because what they try to do actually make no impact to the society. So the key is, if you decided to do something, your ultimate goal is to have an impact. And that is what I would consider inclusive innovation or not. Okay? It's the impact that matters. So for inclusive innovation in product design, so those personal care products is an example. So they basically create, for example, their different, they use different ingredients, and they're also more organic, and they actually make people, for example, they have very sensitive skins, or they may have different skin colors, and they will still appreciate their products. Okay. And then again, inclusive innovation doesn't have to be just about product designs. It could also be about making your existing product more accessible. Okay. So for example, Amazon's drone deliveries to rural areas is also considered inclusive innovation. And then how about pricing? Okay, so going back to that luxury brands example, right? Wow, it's like $18,000. I cannot afford it. So I ask my students and they say, no, if they lower the price, I'm not going to buy it. Okay. However, if they actually come up with more innovative, okay, payment methods, they said they will earn, they will make, okay, money, and they will work hard in order to buy the luxury brand that they admire, that they believe that those brands can inspire them. So PayPal is an example to illustrate my point. Okay, so PayPal's pay in full. Okay, you could also do monthly options. So instead, for luxury brands to come up with some other models that are very cheap or very affordable and trying to please everybody, they stick with their own authenticity, right? They stay true to their brand. Their brand is to inspire people, okay? And then they also see their products more like art pieces, okay? In order to make it more inclusive, those luxury brands could actually work with like PayPal and some other financial institutes, okay? Coming up with different payment methods. So I would consider these inclusive innovation, but in terms of payment methods. Okay? And then finally, it's also very important, and then we actually see more in the literature that focus on inclusive innovation in promotion and advertising. Okay? So for example, going back to Procter & Gamble's like My Bag is Beautiful campaign, how it promotes P&G, actually the products don't actually really include more unique elements, okay, for different types of people, not necessarily. Okay. However, okay, they emphasize to promote, they try to promote more positive representation of a Black beauty and the culture as well. So the message, the advertising campaigns itself is actually very, very creative and also very inclusive. So you see, based on this, okay, based on basically these findings are coming out from the interviews and then by talking to like brand managers. And I realized that inclusive innovation, again, can just go beyond product designs. Don't just stick with that, okay? Especially for luxury brands, there's no way they could come up with something that could just please everybody. Not necessarily just luxury brands, even with many other products. It's very difficult for them to really make a product that is truly for everybody. Somebody's going to campaign, right? Somebody's going to say something about that, right? However, if you cannot do that, you still wanted to include an inclusive innovation process, your workplace, emphasize it. You can also make your promotion and advertising messages very inclusive. Okay? And that way you resonate to consumers' voice. The consumers, for luxury brands, consumers are not asking you to lower the price. They're not. They're asking you to be more inclusive in the way if they save the money, okay, if they pay your products in 4 installments, 12 installments, and they could still afford it. Okay, so I think that is something that I come out from my interviews with the managers. So this is my kind of like, it's not actually not my main study. It is basically just preliminary findings to help me develop my research model. So any questions so far? So this is basically more like my thinking, and I also try to make it like, hey, maybe product designs. And I learned a lot from the examples of BMW and Mercedes-Benz. I also learned a lot from when I talk to the brand consultants about some of the brands, because the way they defined inclusion is not by making impact. Instead, they are thinking, if I lower the price, if I do this, I have another segment, I'm going to make more money. So, and then that leads to some other interesting questions about cultural issues. So remember one of the questions I asked earlier on, actually, who should be included, right? Who defined, right? Who really defined inclusion as well, right? And I talked to another brand manager, who's in charge of the Chinese market. It's very, very interesting. It's very interesting conversation. So it's talking about Chinese skin whitening. Okay? So several years ago, so that the brand, I'm not going to say which brand, the brand actually launched many different foundation, face foundation. Okay, I don't usually put foundation on my face. Okay, so but I know it's because I actually cannot find my tone. Okay, my foundation color. So that's the problem. Because every time when I go to department store, and then I'll basically just find all those like foundation. They are very white in color, and that's not my color, and I don't like it. Okay, but it turns out. It turns out the brand manager also wanted to copy something or doing something that they have been doing in the US and in Europe. And they also wanted to bring that model, more inclusive kind of like a model, business model to China. But it actually doesn't work. They also tried to launch their kind of like foundation, many different colors, okay, especially those color foundations that's very close to Asian skin colors. And then the sales actually kind of like, not impressive, basically. And then they just decided to, they decided to remove actually some of the foundation colors from the retail shelves. Okay. And you look at this one, not too long ago, published in January 25 this year, whitening cosmetics are still a must in China, right? So these are also some other issues I wanted to bring it up, okay? That maybe different cultures, okay, the way how they define, okay, maybe beauty standards are also very different. So us as a marketer, what are we going to do, right? And that's also why that inspired me coming up with this kind of like inclusive innovation. Doesn't have to be just about product designs. Okay, I'm not saying that we should, okay, or we should not just, or I'm not saying that companies should not be inclusive. My answer to my own question, if you look at my presentation title, should all brands be inclusive? Okay. Okay. Or do all brands benefit from being inclusive? I would say the answer is still yes. Okay. But then they're going to do it in different ways. Some may focus more on product designs. They will be better off. Some will be better off, okay? So to keep the price tag, especially for luxury brands, but they are going to focus more on, okay, making their advertising campaigns, maybe their payment methods, okay, more inclusive. Okay. So this is a main study. Okay. So just based on my preliminary findings, okay, so my focus will be inclusive innovation process, and then I'm actually going to do the test analysis. I'll show you. I'll come back to this model. So maybe that gives you kind of like a better idea what I'm actually planning to do. Okay. I've done a little bit, but the last 3-4 months I basically work on collecting a lot of the qualitative data, also interviews as well. So I'm going to actually work with one of my colleagues at University of Victoria in Canada. Okay. So the Rockwood School of Business actually has a survey, and then they conduct a survey every year since 2015, about 400 brands. I put about 400 brands because when they started off, they have less than 400 brands. And then over the years, some brands dropped from the list, and then they also add a few other brands as well. But approximately like 400 brands. And then they are going to update the database to 2023 because they already complete their data collection. Okay, so what's in that study? Okay. They actually collect brand trust survey, right? Asking Canadian consumers about how they value their brands, okay, how much they value their brands.
Hi, how are you?
Hey.
Bien, bien. Yeah, I'm bien. I'm at work.
Oh, I thought somebody has a question. Okay, never mind. So brand trust, and then brand authenticity, brand ability. So these are basically the data that the School of Business have been collecting since 2015, and then they have 8 years of data. Okay, so that I will use it to capture the impact of inclusive innovation. And then in order to capture inclusive innovation process and inclusive innovation in all these 4 different domains, okay, I'll do the test analysis and then use machine learning. I basically have a trained data set, and then based on the letters to shareholders, okay, to analyze how the companies and to what extent they actually include inclusivity in their business activities. Okay, so
Ruby, can I
yes.
ask a question? Can you? Okay, here. So you said you are going to use text analysis.
Yeah.
Does that mean you are going to like collect like product reviews, or what kind of text are you going to?
Yeah, I will collect data from letters to shareholders. So every year, CEO will write a letter to shareholders. Okay? So in the annual report, and usually the letters to her shareholders is more like defined, okay, what the company has done and will be doing. Okay? So for example, when I read the letter to shareholders by Louis Vuitton Group, the LVMH Group, okay, they talk about very specifically what they do about inclusive innovation. Okay? They don't have anything about product designs. Instead, their inclusivity actually focus on the workforce. Okay? So in their letter to shareholders, they mentioned that 70% of their workforce actually is women. Okay? And they also come from many different backgrounds as well. Okay? So I basically just do the test analysis, okay, using based on the 400 brands. And then for each brand, I will also collect their company annual reports along with the letters to shareholders. And then I'll do the test analysis. I thought of doing the social media as well. My only worry is because if I wanted to, I might not be able to capture some of the data back in like 2015, 2016. I know I should be able to get the data in the last 2-3 years. That I shouldn't have any problems, but so that's my concern. You have any idea? I mean, for social media data collection?
No idea. I think that's like using like annual reports would be a good one. But that is kind of like a supply side. So, and
that's true. So the demand side, so about the impact, right? So I relied on the survey data, okay, from Gustav School of Business.
So to measure, can you go back?
Yeah.
So to measure the kind of the
to measure the impacts, right? The inclusion,
I mean,
innovation.
Brand trust or brand authority, something like that. So you are going to use a survey.
I don't have to. Actually, the School of Business over there at University of Victoria, they collect the data every year.
They already collected.
Yeah, they collect it already, and then they are going to collect it every year. It's actually pretty cool. I actually found out, I mean, that data not too long ago, about like 2 months ago. I feel like, boy, that actually solved my puzzle. Because I've been puzzling, how am I going to capture the impact of inclusive innovation? And then the survey actually it's not a long survey, and it's very difficult to collect a survey data from consumers. And then, but then the survey is long enough to capture all these different dimensions. So brand trust overall is basically the composite score of all these 4 dimensions: brand authenticity, brand ability, like a functional trust, and then brand affinity. So the relationship with trust. All these are survey data, right? Okay. And then we have already tested to what extent that brand trust over the years affect revenues growth. So we already did a growth model, and it actually shows that brand trust has a significant impact on revenues growth. So now we wanted to make the story more interesting, because if you just show that brand trust leads to revenues or sales growth, we all know that, right? So, but then I think it would be interesting to also look at inclusive innovation processes, inclusive innovations in all these 4 pillars that will have any impacts.
Oh, I have a quick suggestion. I mean, I guess it could be.
Please.
So there's this idea of open innovation, right? So going back to the process side of the equation, right? So so the idea of including users into the process of innovation, right? So and I know that you're probably familiar with Frank Pillar's work on this, right? So Frank has a whole center on open user innovation. So I wonder if there's some databases that like they might have access to, where certain brands use open user innovation, and especially in the front end of the process, right? To see if, because right now, the way Sumha just mentioned it, the annual reports and the letters to the CEO is a very biased,
it's a supply side
perspective, perspective. So perhaps there's another, how many companies are using open user innovation, in your database. That I'm pretty sure something like that might. I don't know for sure, but I can speculate that it might exist out there. How many companies are using the open user innovation process? So. Just a thought. Yeah.
Okay. No, the data thing, I mean, has been my biggest concern, actually. Yeah. And then the conceptual underpinnings of inclusive innovation, and it's also very challenging. right? What is really considered like inclusive, right? So so I think going back to Sarika's questions, right? So for solar panels to create something that solve the problems of those people who live in the bottom of the pyramid, to me, it's more like a social innovation. Okay, and I would say inclusive innovation. It's just social innovation to me is a much bigger question or issue we wanted to tackle, and then inclusive innovation is only part of it. And I see responsible innovation. I know the center, you guys have a center for responsible innovation. To me, it's more about, and Milda, please correct me if my understanding is not correct. Responsible innovation for me is more like from also the supply side, right? When they come up with creative or new products or new services, make sure that they care about the environment, right? They don't take away, the resources from other people. They do not really create products and then create the waste at the same time, right? So, but then the focus is not really about inclusivity. Or maybe I shouldn't say that it's not about, but the focus is, it's not the main focus. Is that right? Or responsible?
No. It is
also
definitely.
be inclusive.
Yeah, there are 4 dimensions that, classic in the classic way of looking at responsible innovation it's got 4 dimensions, which one is about inclusivity. The first dimension is inclusivity. The second one is again, but I think you're broadly right. It is a more supply side view. So it's first one's the inclusivity. Second one's anticipation. How do you anticipate negative, harmful effects and build affordances into the product during the product development process? Anticipating harms. So it's very specifically focused on anticipating harms, whether it's environmental harms or social harms and so on and so forth.
Right.
So that's the second dimension. There's a third dimension about reflexivity and how much you are aware of your own biases and during from the development side and the marketing side and the business commercialization side, and then also finally the sort of responsiveness to whatever is happening out in the market. So more like a classic market orientation type of view of it. So there's about 4 dimensions. There are other things also people talk about.
Right.
But inclusive, the first dimension is often is inclusivity. Now the thing that we are doing here is a little more broader because we also look at including the environment because in the classic responsibility literature they talk about stakeholders, and environment, and typically stakeholders have like a voice and agency. The environment has neither. It's a passive participant in the innovation process. So inclusivity, we look at environment also. Sorry, going on a tangent on responsible innovation, but to answer your question, yeah, it is certainly a big part of the first dimension is inclusion.
Yeah. No, I agree. So basically, inclusive innovation is also kind of like focus on a lot more on also the human side, right? And then responsible innovation, I would say, and social innovation actually is a larger focus, and also trying to solve bigger problems, much bigger problems, okay, than inclusive innovation.
Ruby, I have a quick question here about the inclusive innovation process. So I wonder like how you would define this process and which perspective you would like to examine. And you mentioned like inclusion and diversity in the workplace. This part seems like it's part of the management. We usually very
it is actually it is
like if a company create like an inclusive and diverse culture, and if they are adopting like human oriented type of HR strategies and policies,
Mhm.
would all these, kind of impact the entire process? Is that, what you are aiming
Yeah,
to?
this is what I'm actually going after. So the inclusive innovation process is basically the steps, what's inside the organization, right? Okay, to really facilitate the outcomes. So it could be when you hire more, people with a different background and then with different skill sets, okay, and different abilities, and these kind of inclusive innovation process, and hopefully with like different combinations of people on the team, for example, and eventually might drive more inclusive innovation product or outcomes as well too. So these could also lead to, right, the process, and that's a very classic literature in the product management literature as well, right? Process could also lead to the outcomes, right? But definitely not the other way around, right? And the process is basically within the organization, and also the steps, right?
I just add something here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say in a small firm, like entrepreneurial kind of a context, because they're not large existing organizations. It's not that when we are talking about HR, we are talking about an HR division as such. But when we talk about business models and we talk about the operations process, then these things are also relevant, like how you your employees and how you are making that inclusive. It's all a part of the innovation process in our, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. So data is actually much, much bigger than just this small bullet point. Okay. So what I found, this model, I'm still collecting data. So I would say the key contribution is definitely to kind of like define inclusive innovation in a much broader sense. Okay. Because right now, if you look at the literature, the definition is just very narrowly focused. And it's so much just about product designs. And we all know that, okay, if we are familiar with the innovation literature, it's just not about the product innovation. Okay. So we have the very classic, one of the very earlier like Journal of Marketing paper, the JM paper, is also talk about marketing innovation is also an innovation. Okay. It's more than just a physical product innovation. Marketing innovation is also innovation, and process innovation is also innovation. Administrative innovation is innovation. Technological innovation is innovation. Okay. And that's why I'm trying to propose that, inclusive innovation doesn't have to be just about product designs. Also doesn't have to be just about campaign messages. Okay. Very, very few really look at, I haven't actually read anything about the payment methods. We wanted to make our products more accessible. One way to do it is to come up with more innovative payment methods. Okay. Another way is how we distribute to our consumers. Okay. I don't know, probably you have heard of this term like food desert. Okay. Even though in the US, there are many, many people who live in very rural communities. They have very little access to food. Not necessarily, of course, it's also to do with the income, right? But it's also to do with the fact that many retailers like Walmart, Target, they don't want to have their physical stores in those rural areas. It's because it's just not enough. The market size is just not enough, right? So you're actually making it so inaccessible to a lot of people, right? And people keep saying that, hey, these people, they just eat junk food, okay? They deserve it, okay? Oh, they have obesity, they deserve it. That's not true. The reason oftentimes is they don't have access to healthy food. What they have is just all those like chips, unhealthy food, and things like that, right? So that's why I wanted to kind of like make a statement, okay, louder, okay? And by looking at inclusive innovation in multiple ways, okay, I'm also hoping researchers can also see, also kind of like study from another angle. And then the inclusive innovation impact is also very important. Okay. So for social innovation, responsible innovation, inclusive innovation, all we wanted to do is to hopefully tell our marketers that impacts are important. Okay? It's not about you lower the price, then you get more consumers. No, but it's the impact to the society that matters. Okay? No matter what we do, responsible innovation, inclusive innovation, social innovation, the impact actually matters the most. So to conclude again, so basically, yeah, I would say all brands would benefit from like being inclusive, right? But basically, it really depends on which dimensions, okay, they should focus on, okay, and that they are good at, and that truly reflect their own value, right? And resonate consumers as well, okay? Okay. So that is something I always wanted to use, especially to conclude my presentation. So educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all, right? So, and again, going back to what I am so interested in studying this is also to do with my own background, my undergrad degree, and then my individual, growing as well, right? So through teaching and engaging with our children, students, consumers, and managers, they are planted with a seed that allows them to see our world from a more inclusive perspective. Just plant a little seed, just telling them, hey, if you cannot come up with something that is very affordable, and that's okay, because your brand is a luxury brand, right? We're not going to brand you, okay? But you still can do a lot of other things, okay, to be more inclusive in your innovation. So that's all I have for today. I don't know if I've done a good job, but comments, questions are all welcome. Because I'm still working on it, and then you know that basically these preliminary findings took me actually really like a few months to collect the data. And then I'm still trying to kind of like refine my conceptual model, and also trying to refine the definition of inclusive innovation as well. I just find it difficult, especially when there's so many different perspectives, and then they sometimes actually contradictory to each other too. Okay. Especially one of the definitions I actually did not include it here, and it's from the core of paper, JBR 2023. The special issue editors suggested that like inclusive innovation is more like everyone should be included in the development of new ideas and solutions so that they can benefit everyone, not just a select few. So that's, to me, again, when I look at this definition, the call for papers for that particular special issue, I really come to realize that, it's really difficult or really to define, right, inclusive innovation if we just stuck with that, the idea of product design focus.
So the main focus, main takeaway, if you can get, correct me if I'm wrong, Ruby, that I'm getting out of here is that, okay, your brand can be exclusive, right? A very exclusive brand, which does not include a lot of different people, but your innovation process can be inclusive, right? And because of which overall, as a brand, you could be more inclusive than you previously were, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Especially for luxury brands, and they come to, get a lot of attack, right? And it's also to do with the fact they build on scarcity, right? They just build on exclusivity, right? So everybody's trying to say that, no, they are just not right. They have to do this and that. And at the same time, what's interesting is like consumers say, no. If they are going to be cheap, we're not going to buy from it, right? So what's the point of buying that? Gucci or LV, right? Then they no longer really kind of like resonate my own perspective, my view. So again, it's true, right? So yeah. So
so let me flip the thing a little there. So you focus a little more on the exclusive luxury brands, right? So and making the process more inclusive, the brand can be the product itself and the design itself can be exclusive, but the process is inclusive, right? So let's flip that to the other side and go to the mass market product, right? So to like something that's really accessible price wise to a broad sector of society, right? So how do you see that segment becoming? What is the inclusivity process there? And you know, do you have any comments or thoughts about
For mass
that?
products, definitely there's a Microsoft Xbox, right? For mass products, right? You look at Sesame, Untouched phones, and these products are for mass products. And definitely the focus should be product designs.
Yeah. So more representative designs, more representative to the overall population. So representativeness becomes more important in that.
Right. I would say so. Yeah. And then also about the price point, right? Okay. And you see that when I say pricing, I don't really mean to, increase the price or lower the price, and that actually is not my focus. To me, it's the payment methods. Okay. That make it more inclusive or less inclusive.
Thank you.
So I will, continue to work on this project, and I'm still waiting to hear from the Fulbright. Just what I find it interesting is like, especially those people from more developing and emerging economies. And I talked to the consumers there, and then they said that they would save up, they would do whatever they could to buy a luxury brand. Okay? They just wanted to have that kind of exclusivity. And that actually just got me wonder, why is that the case, right? So I will continue to explore this. To me, it's just interesting. I don't know how, if you have any ideas or any kind of like experience, with this kind of like similar conversation.
Well, I think that the reason why people, I should stratify this first. So if we're talking about specifically luxury brands, meaning Gucci, Louis Vuitton, all that stuff, LVMH, that's statistically speaking, the upper 2% of the population worldwide. If you're looking at the world, you cannot talk about inclusivity of the world, because if you just look at the global political climate, half the world's being bombed. We're sitting here, picking our fingernails, right? Wondering which bag we're going to get because there's only 5 made by Prada. So if we're looking at, are we talking about the 2% or are we talking about 98%? Right.
But the interesting thing is it's not even like the 2%. That's why I find it interesting. It's even the consumers from those like 98% or from like Kosovo in particular, because what my proposal is to go to like Kosovo. It's a small country, close to like Turkey and Serbia. Okay. And then the consumers there, they said, no, we don't care. Okay, I know it's expensive. Still, Apple iPhones are expensive, but I will do whatever I can just to save up the money just to go and buy Apple. I don't care about your phone. Your phone is not even, I don't know what the brand, the phone that you're using. I'm not interested in that. So that's why I'm not talking about the 2%. That made me wonder, why not 98%, maybe another 5% or 10% of people, they are so into that kind of like luxury brands, even though they just cannot afford. And they actually don't want to lower the prices either.
I think part of that is because what the branding actually represents, because the power, for example, of the US brand as America, the land of achievable dreams. If you have an iPhone, it resonates with success. It's like you look at Tesla, right? Before Elon blew up Twitter, Tesla was like, yay, we are going to support our environment. We're going to go to Mars. And now most people on Tesla are like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm associated with a psychopath. It's really, living here in San Francisco with Twitter right down the street where, half of my friends work in tech. It's like, okay, you're kind of looking at what does branding actually mean to not only where that primary consumer market is versus somebody who wants it but cannot afford it. This has a certain meaning, but for your example, the people in Kosovo, or say somebody who lives in, I don't know, Xinjiang, and they want to buy a $5,000 bag, because it's the class, it's the representation of how they have been told since they were children that this is how you're successful. If you're 10 years old in China, you're expected to be a doctor, right? And a lawyer, and have 5 boys, you know, and not complain and have bills, right? So, or if you're in Iran, right, or like Afghanistan right now, like you can't go to school, like girls are being
Exactly. Yeah.
So is that girl gonna care if she has an iPhone when she doesn't even know how to read? Right. So it's like when you're talking about inclusivity, it's like, first of all, we have to look at geopolitical elements. It's like, are we talking about the effects of globalization? Right. Are consumer products even available? And that's during COVID. No, nobody could get a computer chip, you know? Right. We're looking at 2023. I mean, it took me 4 months to get healthcare paperwork. It's like, really? I live in San Francisco. Right? 4 months so I can go make sure, you know, that my blood pressure is okay. And I used to work in healthcare. I can go in and do my own blood pressure, you know? So when you're talking about inclusivity, it's like look at that example of the Sam Smith video. I don't know if you guys have seen this. Like, I'm not here to make friends. It's a music video where he's, do yourself a favor, look at this video. If you're from the Bay Area, probably not going to be a big surprise. But if you're from, like, I don't know, some really repressive state, like say North Korea, it'd be like, oh, sin, blasphemy, the devil. Or if you go into like the Bible Belt, sin, the devil, you know, like wearing corsets, you know, oh my God, it's so gay. So for us, inclusivity, I think this video, for example, is a good example of inclusivity, because you have somebody who's gender bending, somebody who's doing everything that, you know, is a little bit on the edge, right? You can make the argument that displaying a golden shower is not exactly healthy, right? I'm not going to say or judge the video. It's when I look at a video like that, having grown up in San Francisco in the Castro, right outside my window, you know, a guy walking around naked with, you know, a little thing on his phallic device. It's like, that's normal. It's normal. So if you're not normalized to it, inclusivity is a big issue. Right? But if you are normalized to it, inclusivity is already part of the package. Right? So when I go out there, I'll give you an example. Because of the way that I was raised as, you know, an Asian American, like my father's from China, my mother's from Taiwan. They're 40 years older than me. I mean, my grandmother was very severe. You know, my great aunt had bound feet. So I'm from a heritage that's like, okay, I can definitely see why the Kuomintang went to Taiwan, right? Like, I'm not going to say anything about Chinese politics. I'm Taiwan.
No, got you.
US, right? I want, you know, I'm pretty sure if I went to China, I'd be black bagged and I'd never come back. Like that's pretty, I'd probably get facial ID'd and said like, oh no, this person's too liberal or something. But the point I'm trying to make is, I grew up with that whole, you have to be successful. You're successful through drawing like this, the name brands you've already mentioned, BMW, Mercedes, etc. That was highly prevalent. But I grew up in this culture of women being expected to be, I'm just gonna be, you know, be ding, 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 ding. Like I'm very expected to be this way, keep my mouth shut, to have an opinion, look very cute, and be very docile, and have a nice voice, right? Don't be strong. So, and then men would treat you this way. So I became kind of wedged in this corner of like, okay, I'm expected to be this way, but I don't want to be this way. And they put me in the corner, and I didn't like that. Why? Because not only did they beat it into me that I had to be subservient, like literally physically hit every day of my life and told I was useless unless I did A, B, C, and D and earn all this money and blah, blah, blah. Become a doctor when I'm 10, right? Now it's like, you know, at this point, it's like, okay, I grew up with that, but I made a choice not to be drawn by the brand. It's like, well, what is this going to do for me? I asked the question of what does this do for me? Not about do I feel included by the brand, but is it functional? Do I really need a $300,000 car? Or can I just buy a car that's used, right? And save the money and do something else with it. So when you're talking about a certain population that is oppressed or depressed, that doesn't have access to think about finances, to think about health, to think about access to healthcare or access to resources, or even funding to go above this baseline problem of how do we just feed ourselves and pay rent, right? If you're suppressed at that level, which is basically indentured servitude with minimum wage, right, without any benefits, which is what most people are going through worldwide, or if they can even get a job, right? If you're looking at that, like think about all those people in tech who come over from India, who are trying to get an H-1 visa, or all those people in Europe who have, I mean, think about all those people who escaped Afghanistan, had to go on a boat to Brazil and go through 11 countries on foot just to get stopped at our border to try to get in, because when the US pulled out of Afghanistan, they had no other choice because they weren't the government. So it's like, when we're talking about inclusivity, how do we include those people, the migrants, whether they're going across the boat from North Africa through the Italian Peninsula, or if they're trying to escape the China takeover of Hong Kong, or if they're, there's so many problems worldwide. Inclusivity, I think, is a bigger issue than just, well, will someone buy Prada? It's like, at that point, this is a very, 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 very small thing. So I think the most important thing to think about is not so much about, okay, inclusivity to buy the brand or export the brand or sell with the brand. It's about ultimately, how do we make the world more equitable?
Right, it's the impact, right? The impact that matters. I agree, it's the impact.
Yeah, so the branding actually doesn't even matter. It's like, I agree with you, like the impact, which is the most important thing, but the impact is, how do you let people know that, hey, I care about you, but I'm gonna, for example, I'm the FDA, I'm gonna give you a label, what's okay, but guess what? You can have an ingredient that says natural flavor, and it's not actually natural flavor. It's a word coded for some chemical compound to make it hyper palatable, so you become addicted through the dopaminergic response of your brain.
I saw that too.
Like French fries, it's like every time there's this wonderful French fry place right by my gym, and I spend an hour working out, and I go by and I go, it's like being a monkey. I'm like, I know I have a prefrontal cortex, but that addiction that I have to French fries, why does that exist? That exists because the companies who produce these easy access foods, 59-cent hamburgers, 99-cent for 2 burritos, whatever you want to call it, for, again, the lower echelons of society, this is not a judgment, it's just a simple matter of fact of economics, right? Who is, I don't know, Elon Musk versus who is the general worker here that drives, a minibus, right? Like, they're never gonna go from jet to jet to jet, land on some hotel in Macau, or land on, a luxury yacht. Where I'm talking about the group of people that sit here and say, okay, this is my minimum education, because whatever background that they have, they can only ascend so far with a certain amount of time versus effort. So when we're talking about inclusion, how do we include the base pyramid of society, which is the lower percentage? It doesn't matter where you are in the world, right? Whether you're churning butter or you're, plowing the field, how do we get those people their basic needs? Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm going to jump in here. Is it Ocean? Is that how you pronounce your name? A beautiful name, by the way.
Thank you.
And I love your enthusiasm and your excitement, and your ideas are fantastic. And I'm so glad to kind of hear, your views and bringing some of that into this discussion, because I think that inclusivity is one of those things that's very difficult for a lot of us to understand. And how do we bring? By the way, I'm wearing my San Francisco hat on purpose because I wasn't on camera because I look like crap today, and
you look fine. You look fine.
You look great.
But as you are.
We got 10 inches coming in here, so this is 10 inches of snow. Meaning, sorry, so we're just waiting. It's there's so many different variables and so many different factors that come into play, and I find it to be sort of an interesting time that we're in, because I grew up in an era where, to me, I grew up in an extremely integrated neighborhood outside Newark, New Jersey, and I had every race, ethnicity, religion you can imagine lived on my street. If you mention it, I'm going to tell you, there was Susie Kim was the Korean lady across the street that used to make kimchi for me when I was in kindergarten. Right. So I like my best friend was a little black kid named Thurman Mills. It's like, there's just these, like, we had this really cool neighborhood, and it's just a nice vibe. I always thought everybody had the same opportunities, right? That's the American way. Everybody gets the same. And it wasn't until I was an adult that I realized that there wasn't this concept of equity. And it's really been the last few years that it's become such a big topic. So I think that's what's really the big thing here, is that there's a lot to this, Ruby. And I think the research that you're doing is phenomenal, because there's these different facets of this whole thing of what's diversity, how do you include everyone? And I think this is a conversation we're going to continue to have for a long time. So I appreciate your research and what you're doing in this space.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Also diversity, I still have that kind of debate, right? Diversity is not the same as inclusion, right? So if you look at the literature, even look at what people have been trying to do, oh, they put a different people with different colors in the same room and then they call it inclusion. I say, no, right? Okay. To some extent, you can show the diversity, but then those people, their voices are not heard. We don't care about what they talk, right? We just try to put people with different colors to show that we have checked the box. But then nobody's listened to what they wanted to tell us, right? And to me, that is not inclusion.
Right. Well, and so because my department covers management and marketing, and I have our people who are doing a lot of work in this space. This has been a big topic in my department, especially right now. And, my understanding of what inclusion means is that everyone can feel valued. Everyone feels like they have a voice and that they have value.
Right. They have value, right? Yeah.
I agree with that.
What inclusion means right now.
So that's what I'm trying to capture. So I have the supply side. So it's like do the test analysis, and then hopefully the demand side, the inclusive innovation impact. Okay. And then looking at consumers' trust to the brand in terms of its authenticity, ability, should be able to capture some of them. I'm not saying that I will be able to capture everything, but hopefully that.
Well, but if you're capturing everything, you're not really doing research, right?
I hate
well said, well said.
I hate to interrupt. We are about like 7 minutes over, but if you would, like stay with us to join the conversation, if Ruby has time, we would love to do that. But I would like to thank you, for all others, to join our presentation, the seminar today. And I think I had so much fun.
Yeah, same here. If any one of you is interested in working on this, let me know as well. So I'll be happy to have you guys on board.
Well, thank you, Ruby.
You can welcome people from Michigan to Florida in the winter is a really good plan. Just send an invitation.
Okay, I will. Are you coming down to see me?
Good. Need to make a plan. Don't have anything on the books right now, but would love to see it.
Tallahassee. I mean, it's like if you wanted to go to a nice beach, it's like 2 hours.
Okay.
I'm not in Miami. I'm not down in Miami or
AMA winner is in St. Pete's, right?
Yes, that's correct. It's like 5 hours maybe from where I live.
All right.
All right, guys.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ruby, again. Wonderful presentation.
Thank
Great
you so
talk.
much, Ruby.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
You too.